Jiminy came into care, and when we perched them in the quarantine rooms in the care centre, they have a frame, and if they're feeling all right, they'll be at the top of the frame, eating the leaf, hiding under the leaf, doing all the things that they naturally do. Jiminy is sitting very close to the ground, as in 30 centimetres from the ground, in the lowest possible spot. That is a really, really bad sign. When they want to be close to the ground, it's because they're frightened of falling. And if they're frightened of falling, that means that they're really crook. So if they're having difficulty climbing in any way, if they're sitting low in the tree, and by low in the tree I mean 4 metres or less, or if they're on the ground, staying in the same tree without moving, or even in the same small patch of trees sometimes, if they can move between them, that is a good indication that there is something wrong. If you can see the reason why, like if there are dogs in the area, that might be why they're staying in the tree. But if they're low in a tree and not moving from that tree, very likely that there is a big problem there. So any obvious injuries, obviously this Joey's been hit by a car, or its mum was hit by a car and it's got grazing on its face. Any big wounds like that on the back, anything obvious. Oh, Hendrix. Okay, so this x-ray is of Hendrix's arm. So what happened to Hendrix was he came into care after he was hit in the face by a car, and when I got to him, he quite clearly had a very broken arm. So when I saw it, I thought, oh dear, he's broken his arm. But when we got him to Currumbin and they x-rayed it, it had been broken about 4 weeks before, and he'd been using that arm for 4 weeks with both of those bones broken, and it's actually healed like that. So he was put out eventually. They said, if we break that and try to reset it, we're going to do more damage. So it's healed really badly, but it's healed. So he is very effectively climbing around out there in the wild now with that very, very broken arm. He did stay in care for a while because the head trauma that he suffered from the second car hit actually made him blind in one eye. We just needed to make sure that his balance was good, but he was fine to go out. Bo was hit in the face by the car straight on, so both of his retinas were detached. Fortunately, one of the eyes started to work partially, so he had partial sight in one eye, and we were able to put him out in some beautiful habitat. You wouldn't put him out in the middle of Gunnellabar where there's backyards and dogs and cars, but he went out to some beautiful habitat in Dunoon where he's not basically going to be left alone for the rest of his life. So we hope that he has a nice, good life out there. But if you see a koala sitting on the side of the road, it's probably been hit by a car. Even if it looks fine, like I say, they don't scream, they don't cry, they don't do any of those things. They just sit there. They're really stoic. If they're grinding their teeth or flicking their ears, there's definitely something wrong with them. But yeah, just sitting on the side of the road, it's very likely that it's been hit by a car. Dogs. So, as I said to you, it's domestic dogs that are mostly the problem. This top one here, it's really hard to show in a picture what saliva patterning looks like on a coat, and that's about as close as I could get because there's blood in it as well. It's not the same as when they get wet from rain. Saliva is a lot stickier and stays wet for a lot longer. So yeah, this girl was taken out, and her pouch young was also bitten through the pouch, and unfortunately it's one of its lungs collapsed, but they were able to reinflate it, but it died a couple of days later, so it didn't work out well. This one is a mum and bub that was only a couple of months ago. The people heard the koalas doing something in their backyard. They thought it might have been two males fighting, but they heard the growling that comes from koalas sometimes. They didn't check it until the morning, and unfortunately this was wild dogs. Wild dogs had moved through the property. They killed 2 koalas that night, this mum and bub and another female who was actually half of who was missing. But for this one, the tragedy here is that because they didn't go out and check straight away, mum died face down and she smothered the joey. The joey was actually fine and uninjured from the dog attack, but it suffocated. So if you see a koala in those situations, and look, even if you're not comfortable with it, to touch it, call us straight away. We'll get there as quickly as we can and we'll do it for you. It's no problem for us to go out there at any time. Joeys, they're lovelies. So yes, anything smaller than a rock melon definitely shouldn't be by itself. The thing you need to keep an eye out for is mum around somewhere. Sometimes mum will leave the joey and go and have a sleep somewhere and then come back and pick it up, and then they'll try it. But if there is a joey chirping, they make a kind of noise. If they're chirping and mum's not around, there's a problem. If mum's in the tree and the joey's on the ground and it's chirping and she's not coming down, there's a problem with the joey. So, but in any of those circumstances, you need to call a hotline and talk it through with someone, because there are a lot of different situations with joeys, and they need to, the sooner you get to them, the better chance they have. Having said that, we don't want to take them away from a mum unnecessarily, because their best chance is being raised by their mum. But those females can tell whether or not there's something wrong with that joey in a way that we could never understand. They know if they're sick, they know if they're injured, and they will not reunite with their joey, no matter how long it yips for, if you don't. So we had a case where a member of the public refused to let us come and get it because she wouldn't tell us where she was. She said, no, they're going to reunite. And then 24 hours later she said, it's still on the ground, I'll bring it in. And it died because it was hypothermic, you know. It's like, well, of course it is, it's tiny, it's got no fur, and it needed to be in care immediately. So, so that kind of thing can be really frustrating. But if we can get to it fast enough, we've got some fantastic home carers who can do a really good job of bringing them up as best we can. So if a koala is sitting on the ground, unresponsive to what is on around, it's a very sick koala or an injured koala, and it needs attention immediately. Unfortunately, the person that took this beautiful photograph didn't tell us about that koala. They just took the photograph and put it on Facebook a couple of days later. That koala is asking for help. It's sitting on the ground, letting a human take a photo of it. It's asking for help. That was after Cyclone Oswald, so just being rained on for like 5 days solid, it was probably absolutely beside itself. So, but yes, if it's on the ground, we've got a problem. Any koala showing signs of illness or injury needs to be thoroughly assessed before an accurate diagnosis and prognosis can be given. The sooner ill or injured koalas receive a full assessment, the better. So I think Dominic's a really good example of that, where looking at him outwardly, nothing wrong, but the way that he was behaving by going into an area with humans is suggesting that he's not 100% right. So, yeah.